if I was to maybe do this a different way within the context of the four Gospels in the New Testament, what do you have as Jesus Christ? No. Or what do you have as Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam? First, he talks to people, assuming that, oh yeah, people can actually hear what I say, they will understand. He comes to realize people are just dumb. The biggest chapter, Surah Baqarah, the cow, 284 chapters. Read those chapters or those verses very, very closely, and they have nothing good to say about human beings. Awful things, And so what you have in the Gospel of Mark is, he thinks people understand. They don't, not even his own disciples. Then he says, oh, well, maybe I should just talk to my own people, the Jews. He comes to understand, well, they don't really understand anything either. Then you get the Gospel of Luke. My own people suck. Maybe I should just give it to anyone who receives. Then you get to the Gospel of John, it says, no one just gets anything. I'm just going to tell stories. You know what? I'm not even going to tell stories. I'm just going to do magic tricks. And when you look at the Gospels, you realize a man, someone like Jesus, his wisdom just gets matured more and more and more as time passes. His ideas of people change. His idea of how to communicate with people change. And if you pay close attention, there's a good amount of regret as the undercurrent. And when you get to the Gospel of Judas, it just explodes. Life is not worthwhile. I'm just going to leave. You don't have to think about life and death. The only thing you need to think about right now, Grace, finish school. Take the right classes. Get the hell out of Laney as soon as possible. I may go home and be diagnosed with cancer. I don't really know. Okay. The point I'm trying to make is the future is uncertain. What you have is right now. And right now you're 18 and you need to finish school. Make sure that at least when it comes to school, you have no regrets about it. Now, you may major in math or psychology. Is it possible that you may regret having majored in math? Possibly. Yeah.
Can you talk about the transition from desire to action, like from the Rumi and Wisdom of Suffering video? And the boy wants, like, he thinks he's ready for the tattoo, but part of his fantasy is that he is already what it represents, but he's not ready. He doesn't have a placement of where it starts.
Okay. I had a triple bypass. Last night, in addition to working the backyard like a mule for 7 hours, I also went to In-N-Out. What would cause me to do those things? Privilege. I forgot the fragility of my body. I forgot the fact that, or maybe not forget, I just didn't care. I assumed that I'm healthy enough now. My body has recovered. Even though, if I make the wrong movements, my chest will kind of be open in half. I desire to live a long, healthy life, and yet my actions prove otherwise, or say otherwise. And my question to you is, what do I need to do to always remember the fact that I had a triple bypass, that I have some really awful genes given to me from my parents, that my new arteries, which are for the most part quite healthy, could very easily once again become clogged. I need to remember. To remember is, I have to dismiss so many things in life. I have to impose so many insights. I have to make sure I don't forget the past. I also have to remember I'm no longer 20. I'm soon going to be approaching 61. There are so many things I have to remember in order to act appropriately, and it's too difficult. And the truth is, and son, it's an Arabic word, nosiya. It means forgetful in Arabic. And you do all the things that Muslims do just to remember. You pray to remember. You fast to remember. You zakat, alms give. You give to remember. Equality, justice, fairness, your own privilege, others' poverty. You do all the stuff to remember. It's for one reason. We forget, and we forget very quickly. And I think there are these stages that you have to go through, unfortunately. First, you just do things. And then, after a while, you catch yourself doing things, but they're the wrong things for you. They're not making you any younger, any prettier. You're becoming uglier, more deformed, more disgusting. You begin to self-hate enormously. By the time you get to the self-hate part, you have developed so many bad habits. And first you have to think about yourself the right way. Then you have to be around the right stuff so you can remember all the things you have done. And then you have to find a way to kind of get yourself out of this dark pit of self-hatred and depression and just wallowing in the misery, you know. If you don't have a support group, if you don't have someone who will slap you and then hug you, take you out for ice cream, you know, if you just have to do everything on your own, it's a mess. It's like living in a mansion of just crap. And every morning waking up and saying, okay, how am I going to clean this house? You're not living in a studio. You are a 40-year-old young man or woman, accumulated all this history, and most of it stinks. And now in this culture, or maybe these days any culture, you have the responsibility of cleaning the space, but you don't have any friends. You don't have anyone who helps you. So you got to do this on your own. And maybe you will have an inspired day for a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And after a while, you just get exhausted. You know, just doing things on your own is not fun. It's like eating alone is not fun. Watching a movie is not fun. Going for a hike is not fun. It's not a bad thing to have a friend accompanying you. And this is very much the same. And so, if there is a good amount of pain, and if, you know, pain doesn't make you completely depressed, it'll remind you. It serves as a reminder. It slaps you in the face every single moment. And you'll try to act appropriately, but you will fail. Because acting by itself is not enough. You need the right information. And you need the right information, and you can only get it by going to the past, you know, unpacking your history a little bit, finding the things you want to correct. And then you have to open those files, and they're going to create so many emotions for you, you know, and you won't like the emotions of your history. And then you have to go to a different place, look for a different set of information to combat the information existing inside you. And hopefully the new things will devour the old things, you know. If I was to give you a very, very condensed version, it would be from the Zoroastrian tradition. گفتار نیک، پندار نیک، کردار نیک. That it'll take you some time to be able to just think well about things. Let's just say you're 33. Okay. I'm just going to create a story for you. Forgive me. It's not about you, but let me just create it for you. It's not fun to be Adlani at your age. Sure, you could say, if it wasn't for my past, I wouldn't be here today. That's wonderful, fine. But the truth is, once in a while, you and I look ourselves in the mirror and say, I should have been in a different place now. I should be in a different place now. You know. And now you want to make some changes, but you can't make new changes by referring to old habits and old thoughts. It doesn't work. So you have to kind of find a vacuum, a brand new set of ideas that will vacuum the old ideas away and trash them. The problem with old ideas is that you have a relationship with them. You're attached to them. They make you who you are. If you have been depressed for many, many years and all you do is you talk to your friends who are equally depressed and they also talk about their own depression and you guys have been talking about the same stuff for the past 20 years, but you can't get out of depression by hanging out to the old friends. It won't work. Someone needs to walk into your life and just slap you so you just shut your mouth. Every time you want to talk about your past, they'll just stop you. And that's not going to be very pleasurable. You're not going to welcome that. You want to be received. You want to be visible. You don't want someone to slap you every time you open your mouth to talk about your issues. You know, so it's going to take you some time to embrace new ideas. You know, there is this beautiful story in one of the Gospels, I'm not sure which, where he says, you know, you can't go to Joann Fabrics and buy a brand new piece of fabric and attach it to a jacket you've had for 20 years. You have a brand new fabric. It looks really, really good. Your jacket sucks. It stinks. You know, and you're going to make the new look bad. Okay? So you can't get a brand new idea that's about complete transformation and just inject it into a set of old ideas that have dragged you down for most of your life. And so what you need is a brand new way to think. But a brand new way to think means you have to stop thinking in the old tradition, habitual ways. Once you have learned how to think well, there comes a point like a boiler system. You have enough intensity, pressure accumulated inside you where you say, you know, it's kind of like when you drink too much water, then you have to go to the bathroom. Say, okay, you know, I've been thinking about this stuff and they sound really, really good. I want to hear it now. Then you want to put your thoughts into language. But it's a brand new art. It's a path you've never walked before. And so it's going to take you some time to just talk about it. And that in itself, I mean, you're taking action about learning to think well. You're taking action about how to speak well, you know. And then you say, I am tired of giving wisdom to other people. I want to apply it to myself now. And that's going to be very, 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 very difficult. And these are just stages you have to go through. You know, it's so easy to talk. You should come and see me in my house. I am not this way. I scream all the time. I'm angry all the time, impatient all the time, filled with regret and sadness. I'm abusive. You know. And the point I'm trying to ultimately make is bringing something from above, whatever profound and noble ideas you may have, and making it practical down here is enormously difficult. And I think you should cut yourself a lot of slack every time you fall and fail. Take the Zoroastrian path. Learn how to think well. That should take you a couple of lifetimes. Then learn how to put your thoughts into language. That'll take you a few more lifetimes. And then if you're lucky, you will be born as a Jesus Christ or a Mother Teresa, where you say, I don't need to go to school and I don't need tables and chairs of the world. I don't really need friends. I just want to be around books. I'm not interested in romantic relationships. Sex maybe once every 2, 3, 4, 5 years is sufficient. I'm not here for fancy foods. You know, I don't know how people get there, to be honest. Small steps, I guess, yeah. Anyone else? Muhammad? 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 Kira, anything? I'm sorry? Resentment. Resentment, jealousy, envy. They're all siblings, half cousins. Someone has something. It's very personal. You know, resentment, envy, and jealousy. I'm not jealous because Trump has power. I'll be jealous if my parents die and leave most of what they have for my brother. I'll be jealous, I'll be envious, be filled with resentment and anger. So it's a very personal set of emotions. Maybe when I emailed you, this is not about you, forgive me, that thank you for teaching the class, but I'm coming back. Maybe somewhere deep down inside you said, what the hell is he coming back? I'm just beginning to find my niche in the classroom. He has no reason to come back. He's almost dead. You know, he should stay home and rest. I resent him for coming back. So it's kind of like that. Muhammad? Muhammad? Silly?
What is different today in this whole process of awakening, if anything, than 50 years ago?
American style or other style? Like Gangnam style? Which version are you talking about?
Generationally, I guess. How has that shifted? The coming to, how has the mind, from your perspective, I guess that's my question, is how has the mind changed?
I think if you can still find some people who lived through the Depression, the 1920s, and the relationship to, just a romantic relationship, the relationship to money, relationship to having a car, having a house, how they spend money, versus a 20-year-old punk in 2024. Something very drastic has happened to culture. You know, the language is different. Relationships are very, very different now. In the 1920s, people were given certain things. The culture just gave it to them, you know. Whereas the things that made people a bit more patient, a bit more grateful, that even though they were angry, perhaps, they were able to keep their anger within. You know, it's kind of like, you know, this phenomenon of violence in just across America in the past maybe 5, 6 years, not even that long, maybe 3 years, 4 years. I mean, people want to, you know, blame COVID for that, but something has happened to the American culture where people just do things in broad daylight. And it's not so much about like spiritual awakening, just the basic stuff of life. You know, what has happened to, say, our culture where in broad daylight someone will just, even though you're sitting in your car, will take a baseball bat to your window, break it, drag you out, take your purse and leave. And they don't even wear a mask anymore. You know, it's, you can chalk it up to just poverty itself, but the truth is, Middle East is poor. You know, certain parts of Africa creates poverty. and people who have nothing, and yet they're relatively decent. There is something about just this culture, especially the past maybe 5, 15 years, that has made the human being into a beast. It's really not familiar. Yeah, and when you talk about awakening, like spiritual, intellectual awakening, I don't know. I think you need a culture that has the language for that stuff, and that language has been in place for many, many generations. This idea of spiritual awakening is a 1960s phenomenon in America, for the most part. And 50 years is not enough to create language, to create emotions, to create the proper psychological narratives for its people. Versus, say, some place like India or Asia, where that particular language has been around for thousands of years. You can kind of smell that when you go buy bread. When you walk the streets, when you just converse with people. You don't find that here. And so I forgot your question. The only thing that I remember is awakening. What was the question?
My question was, from your perspective, what has changed kind of in that human mindset? As you were talking about, to think differently, you have to have a different mind state. And so, based on what you said, the observation of, becoming more like a beast, there's something that was a continuation on that accelerated. And I was just curious what you had observed.
What sells right now is your body. Is being a sex worker, is making money cheap and fast. That is what, governing most of us right now. And it's always been behind closed. It's been behind closed doors for the most part. There was an element of perhaps shame, or maybe just putting on a different face, kind of like the movie Brokeback Mountain, where you could have homosexual tendencies, but society demanded you get married and have children. And once in a while tell your wife, I'm going to go on a long trip, I'll be back. And you had a boyfriend, or you had this, or you had that. Then you would come back and just live your life. Were you being counterfeit? Sure. Were you lying? Sure. But it was behind closed doors. And as long as no one knew, that would be fine. Today, that's gone. People talk about all sorts of things, and they're actually quite proud to talk about those things in open. Yeah.
Do you think that's any worse than like a banker talking about being proud of their job? Or like a general being proud of their job?
Well, when you talk about military people, they're there to obey. Now, if you're talking about mavericks who once in a while stand up and say no to this or that, that's a different story. I'm not really talking about people in high places. I'm talking about just normal, regular people like you and I. It's a story I always tell. For the first maybe 20 years of being in the classroom, when I would ask people, I would first of all never ask, like, how many of you get high? And even if I did ask, I doubt very much if people's hand would go up. There was something about the students, about their relationship with their parents, about their name, respectability, that forced them to keep their hands down, even if they would do all those things. Today, the story is very, very different. You're actually very gung-ho, very proud to raise your hand and say, not only do I smoke A, B, C, D, I also do E, F, G, H. And then you sit back and say, well, why would you want to do that? So again, high status positions aside, just commoners like you and I. I think for students, You should shower every morning. Come to class dressed well. Make sure that your underwear does not show. You pull your pants up. Smell good. Speak properly. It's becoming such a rare thing these days. Yeah.
Isn't that a result of numbers?
Numbers?
That so many of us, difference between 50 years ago, now 100 years ago is one more zero in the amount of people there is.
I'm sorry, Raphael. Say again.
Us turning into beasts, or us being the American society losing it, I guess. Losing the sense of respect for you not to raise their hands when you ask them to kick them. If anyone gets higher, like that sense of, is it just numbers? The fact that there's so many of us?
Do that stuff?
It's somewhat always there. It's just, it was so, yeah.
Maybe I'm just getting a little older and becoming more conservative. Maybe it's something that young people have always done, to be somewhat rebellious. So I probably am wrong about everything. Mohammed? Any questions from the Middle East? Yeah? Oh. Yeah.
What do you think about the student movements that are happening right now?
So the Israel-Palestine conflict is young people have always been dreamers. There is something beautiful about being young that you see when power has this abuse attached to it. And it's not easy to sit back and watch all these people get massacred by an entity that has a tremendous amount of power. But you can't just push everything to the military aspect of it. Israel was created in 1948. So when you count the numbers, if you were a 10-year-old young Jewish man or Jewish boy who was pushed into Israel, you're now about 70 years old. You have about 60 years of a relationship with that land. You probably got married at the age of 20. You have 2-3 kids. Maybe you now have a few grandkids. And what you have is a generation of the Jewish people in Israel, the state of Israel. That's the only home they've known. Okay. And it's too much, I think, to ask. Even though they may be in the wrong, it's too much to ask, say, someone who lives in the state of Israel, you're here for all the wrong reasons, pack up and go. Go where and do what? You now have a relationship with the land. On the flip side, you also have a group of people who were forced out. And all of us in this class know what resentment does. Look, if I am your father and I have wronged you, and you're now 30 or 40 or 50, and you can't get rid of the image of me inside you, and you do therapy, you also have this thing called cultural psychology. You have an entire Palestinian people who suffer from cultural tragedy, and it's been there for about 70 years or so. This was our place, this is where we lived, and they just pushed us out. You're not talking about a personal history, you're talking about a cultural history. And you need like a cultural therapist now. If as a single human being you need 20 years of therapy to get over some of the stuff that happened to you, well, where do you go to find a cultural therapist? And so, when an injustice has been done to you, and when you feel it to be unfair, you have a good amount of anger. Okay? You can't get rid of anger. It doesn't work. And so what you have is really the Western problem, the British, the French, and later on America pushing these people over there. The state of Israel is created for these people. That's the only home they know. Unlike the rest of us in this classroom, you're not going to allow anyone to take your home, even if you have that home for all the wrong reasons. It's your home. It's like telling me, Amir, you're an awful instructor. Kendra was a wonderful instructor. It's time for you to retire. Pack up and go. Well, I've been in this setting for like 30 years. I'm not going to easily just walk away and give it to her. And so, people want to make one side more evil than the other. And I think they're both victims. All of us are. But I think the evil in this whole thing is the media. And I don't really know if educating those who live in the state of Israel will do anything except to make them feel bad. And even if you make someone feel bad, what are they going to do? Add to it the fact that Israel really is there to tame Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Jordan, Iran, politics. There's so many branches involved in this. It's so complicated. You come on TV as some powerful US person and you say, oh, what Israel is doing is wrong. But then once you leave the podium, you send arms. And then you give them money. I don't know. Yeah. History. Anyways. You had to ask that question.
5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Do you think America's a victim in it too, or?
I think whenever you have a lot of power and that power has not been tamed, the power makes you a victim, but you don't really see that. I think America is a great place for immigrants. And maybe, not their kids so much, but just first generation immigrants. Their kids become a little yuck. So maybe when we get together on Wednesday, class will be a little bit more exciting. It's good to see all of you. Take care. Stay well.
Sorry for leaving.
It's all good. Don't worry.
My brother had a project, so.
Is he younger?
Older.
How old is he?
He's 20, turning 21 in October.
He's going to school?
Yeah, here at Lanning.
Oh,
He
good.
was a director. So.
Good for him.
Thanks for
You take care. It's good to see you. Bye. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. Oh, Grace. Thank you. It's good to see you.
Always good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,